All right, today we're getting into a really powerful one. Arthur Ashe's final memoir, Days of Grace. This book, wow, it is just an incredible, unflinching look at a life defined by integrity, by activism, and a deeply private battle that was suddenly and tragically forced out into the open.
Okay, so this quote right here, this is everything. It's basically the key to understanding the entire book. See, for Arthur Ashe, reputation wasn't just some flimsy public image thing. No, it was about character, something he spent his entire life carefully, deliberately building. And it was that, the thing he valued most in the world, that was about to be put on trial in the most public way imaginable.
So, how did this all start? Well, the crisis that would end up defining the final year of his life didn't start with a bang. It started quietly, with a single phone call. And on the other end of that line, a reporter from USA Today.
And that reporter, well, he knew something. He knew the secret that Arthur Ashe had fiercely protected since 1988, a secret that only his absolute inner circle knew. He was living with HIV, and the tragic irony? He'd contracted it from a blood transfusion during heart surgery years before. It was something completely out of his control that set this whole devastating illness in motion.
So now, can you imagine? Ashe and his wife, Jean, are faced with this absolutely agonizing decision. What do you do? Do you get out ahead of the story and announce it on your own terms? Or do you just wait for the media firestorm to hit and completely take over your life? To them, doing nothing meant losing everything. Their private life was about to be shattered one way or another.
So what did they do? They chose to act. They decided to step into that spotlight, but on their own terms. And that brings us to our first section, a reputation on trial.
I mean, just think about the sheer courage this took. This was the early 90s, right? The stigma around AIDS was enormous. And here he is, in a room jam-packed with reporters, and he doesn't hedge, he doesn't equivocate, he just stands at that podium and calmly, directly confirms it. He took control of his own narrative with just unbelievable grace.
But you have to wonder, right? How does a person face something so devastating, so public, with that much composure? Well, to get that, we need to go deeper. We need to understand the moral code that guided his entire life. He called it the weight of witness.
You know, Ashe always felt like he was being watched, not just by people around him, but by his ancestors, by the dead. His mother passed away when he was just a little kid, only 6 years old, so his father, a strong, incredibly dutiful man, raised him with this ironclad belief in the importance of character and reputation. And Ashe carried that weight, that profound sense of responsibility with him everywhere, onto every tennis court, into every single decision he ever made.
Now, he would say this with a bit of a laugh, but the truth underneath it was so profound. That deep, abiding respect for his father and for the reputation his father taught him to uphold, that was literally the moral compass for his entire life. It guided everything.
And a sense of duty that strong? Well, it's not going to be contained by the white lines of a tennis court. Ashe knew he had to use his platform, his reputation, to fight for things that were so much bigger than the game. And that brings us to his life as an activist, a life that took place far beyond the court.
So just look at the two worlds Arthur Ashe was navigating. They were polar opposites. On one hand, you have the genteel, kind of stuffy world of professional tennis, all country clubs and decorum. And on the other, the brutal, soul-crushing injustice of apartheid in South Africa. He could have just stayed in that comfortable world, but he refused. He chose to step into the fight, becoming a leading voice against segregation, even getting arrested for his beliefs.
And this quote, man, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? This was his core principle. Look, for Arthur Ashe, playing nice and maintaining the status quo meant absolutely nothing when compared to the moral duty to fight for human rights. Yeah, decorum is fine, but justice is essential. Okay, but here's the thing. While all these public battles were raging, he was fighting another one. An intensely personal, private battle that was almost completely hidden from view. So let's talk about that now, the private battle. This wasn't a short fight. We're talking about a 13-year ordeal. It all started way back in '79, with heart disease that led to multiple surgeries. Then, in 1983, a blood transfusion after his second operation, that's what infected him with HIV. But he wasn't diagnosed until 1988. And for 4 long years after that, he fought the illness completely in secret.
So what keeps you going through something like that? For him, it was his family. They were his anchor. He calls his wife, Jean, his rock of stability. But his daughter, Camera, she was his greatest joy. And also his most profound fear. His very first thought, his absolute terror after being diagnosed, was whether he could have passed the virus to his little girl. She wasn't even 2 years old.
And yet, somehow, he faced this terrifying new reality with the exact same focus he'd bring to a Grand Slam final. It's incredible. He knew that if he let despair get a foothold, even for a second, it could all come crashing down. So he took that mental discipline, the very thing that made him a champion, and applied it to the fight for his own life.
So, when you take it all in, this incredible life, this powerful memoir, what are we left with? Well, just like the title says, we're left with a final, unforgettable lesson in grace.
So let's break down the book itself. It's called Days of Grace, co-written with Arnold Rampersad, and it came out in 1993, right after he passed away. And look, yeah, he was a tennis legend, but this book is about so much more than sports. It's for anyone who cares about civil rights, about history, or just wants to read a story about incredible human resilience. It's about facing the end with a kind of dignity that is just off the charts.
And this all builds to the book's final, most powerful message. It's a message that goes way beyond race or sports or what country you're from. In the end, Ashe saw his identity not as a black man or an American or an athlete, but simply as a member of the human family. It's just this beautiful, stunning statement about our shared humanity.
So, our take? Days of Grace is way more than just a memoir. It really feels like an essential piece of reading. It's so eloquent, so unflinchingly honest, and deeply, deeply moving. It feels like a final gift from a man who lived his life and faced his death with this incredible sense of purpose and integrity.
For its incredible, enduring message about what it means to live with grace, even under the most unimaginable pressure, we're giving Days of Grace a final grade of 10 out of 10. It's a perfect score. The book just leaves you thinking, not just about how one man faced his death, but about how all of us should be facing our lives.
And hey, if Arthur Ashe's story really resonated with you, that mix of resilience, activism, and just deep self-reflection, then we've got 2 more you should definitely check out. Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom and the autobiography of Malcolm X. Both are absolutely essential reading.
And that's a wrap on this explainer. For more deep dives into the books and ideas that really shape our world, you know what to do. Make sure you follow and subscribe. Thanks so much for tuning in.